Hello and welcome to BFS Wargaming. So we're here to talk you through some of the armies from Warhammer 40k. So I say some of the armies because we're going to split this into 3 videos. So we're going to go through the Imperium armies, then we're going to do another video on the Chaos armies, and then another video on the Xenos armies. So this is just an overview again. We're going to talk very briefly on the lore of each army, just what the army is about, and maybe just my own personal opinion on the army, but 100% I'm not trying to tell you which army to go for. It has to be your own choice. So this is just a guide. See this as a guide, just as like to see what each army is about, to see which one flares your interest. If one of the armies, if their lore flares your interest, or if maybe the models flare your interest, because we'll have them behind me and hopefully I won't be in the way so you can actually see the models. So we want to see basically if we can flare your interest into an army. Maybe there's 3 or 4 armies. You then go have a look further, look at the models, look at the lore, look into them and see what they're like. I may also tell you whether this army is good in the current edition. So at the moment we're in 8th edition. But definitely don't choose your army off of that unless you're looking to play competitively right now, because come 8th edition or the next chapter approved or whatever it is, things can change. Maybe the worst army becomes the best army. Maybe the best army gets knocked down a few tiers because the points go up and things like that. So things can always change. So never choose your army. If you're looking at long term, an investment into that army, don't choose it off what is good right now. Like I said, if you want to jump into competitions and get really hyper competitive, then yeah, go for the best army and go on that, and then probably when that army is not any good anymore, you'll sell that, buy what is good. So yeah, that's just sort of my little preview I wanted to talk about before we go into the armies. I just wanted to make that clear. I'm not telling you what to get. It's completely your choice. This is just for you to get a flavour of each army. So we're going to kick off. I'm going to go into the Astra Militarum. Okay. So the Astra Militarum, or the Imperial Guard, they are, shall we say, the backbone of the Imperium's armed forces. This is all of the humans. There's billions of them. These are the guys at the front line. These guys may never see a Space Marine in their life because they don't usually live that long. They are easily killed, and they usually win battles by pure numbers. Okay, so this army is actually quite heavily, what's the word, should we say, the idea from this army comes quite heavily from our current military. So like the Cadians are quite heavily based on, like I would say, American or British military. You have like the Valhallans, which are different regiments that are based on sort of Russians. And then you have different ones. You've got Talan Desert Raiders, you have Katachan Jungle Fighters. So there's quite a good flavour to pick from. The only problem is with this army is that you can only really buy Cadian or Katachan models for the infantry at the moment. So we're not sure whether they're going to be bringing out more for the other regiments, which means that you can't really get the look that you want for the other regiments. But if you want to play Cadian or Katachan, then great. So there's a lot of tanks in this army. Obviously, I say it's based on our current military, but you've got a lot of futuristic weapons and things like that. So this army is based around infantry and tanks. And then you do have some sort of extra things like Ogrins and Ratlings, which are like mutated humans, if you like. Like Ogrins are bigger and Ratlings are smaller. But yeah, it's based around, you've got heavy weapons teams, you've got tanks, you've got transport tanks. But yeah, have a look into these. At the moment, the Astra Militarum Codex is a really, really strong codex in 8th edition, and is very, very good. You'll see a lot of them at tournaments and things like that. And also, you can use any Imperium army with another Imperium army. So a lot of people are using Astra Militarum, the troops and stuff like that, to get extra command points, which we'll go into in later videos. But yeah, they're a very useful army in the Imperium. So that's the Astra Militarum. I hope sort of gives you a bit of flavour of what they're about, and why you would want to get involved in them. If you like that sort of, you're really interested in our military at the moment, they're probably the army for you. You've got loads of different tanks to choose from, mortar teams, missile launcher teams, you know, loads of great stuff. You've got flamers and all that sort of thing. It's really, really good. So we're going to move on to the Adeptus Mechanicus. Okay, the Adeptus Mechanicus, or for short, the AdMech, these are augmented humans. So they sort of worship what we call the machine god. Okay, so they're always trying to replace their limbs and stuff with mechanical because they think it's better and things like that. They also create a lot of machines and things like that for the Imperium. So they're allied to the Imperium. But they have their own forge worlds and their own sort of little empire, if you like, within the Imperium. So Mars is their closest planet to Terra, so they're very, very close. They're on Mars, and their models are have a certain flavour to them. Like the robots look quite sort of old school, if you like. And they've got these like dune crawlers, which look really cool, sort of like heavy weapons sort of platforms almost. They've just had a new tank come out as well, which can either be a tank or like a transport. They've got sort of loads of cheap troops as well, like Vanguard, Scutari. They also have Electro Priests, which are quite good in close combat. Hopefully we'll get some photos for you up behind me. So there's a really nice flavour to this army. It's very cool. They haven't got a massive range, it's not huge, but they've got quite a nice selection to choose from. So definitely have a look at their lore, see if it's something that that you would like, a sort of very sort of worshipping the machine god. They also created the Primaris Marines as well, which are like the new Space Marines, the new Adeptus Astartes. On Rabuti Gilliman's say so. So the Primarch who's in charge of the Imperium, he asked before he went into sleep or sort of died, he asked to have the Primaris made, and then when he got brought back, he then got the Primaris out, and now they are sort of starting to take over the Space Marines or the Adeptus Astartes. So they're very, very intricate into the lore. They were about in Horus Heresy, like the Adeptus Mechanicus got split. So half were good, half were bad, and you know they helped either Horus or the Imperium and the Emperor. So there's a good lot of lore about them. So go and have a look if you think that the models and the lore tickles your interest. So next up, we're going to talk about the Sisters of Battle, or the Adeptus Sororitas. So the Sisters of Battle are, right as we speak now, haven't got a very good range out. Well, their range is very, very old. There's a lot of metal models. But this year, so this is being filmed in sort of June. So this year, towards the end of the year, there should be a whole new range, a whole new plastic range for Sisters of Battle. There's going to be a new codex. They've already got a beta codex out now. There's going to be a new codex. So if you're looking at these, just hold off for a little while. If you really, really like the lore, you really, really like the look of them, hold off, and there's going to be a massive new range. And I'm sure there'll be some deals when they come out and stuff, so they should be really, really good. But yeah, basically they are, so a bit about them is they're from a religious section of the Imperium called the Astra Ministorum, and basically there was a decree years ago that the Astra Ministorum could not have men at arms because they basically flouted their power within this sort of religion. And so the way they found round it is they got females at arms to fight for them. So they're all female, hence Sisters of Battle. So yeah, they're very, very cool. They've got like a couple of tanks, flamers, melters, all that sort of thing. They have their sort of leader, if you like, is Saint Celestine, which she's already got a model out, which is a really, really lovely model. And there's loads of new cool rules for them. So take a look at the beta codex as well if you're interested in these, but they're very, very cool. So take a look at them, take a look at their lore. It's very much based on religion, but it is very, very cool. They've got, like saints and all of that sort of thing. So take a look into that. Okay, so I'm just going to mention there's a few sort of sectors within the Imperium. You can't really create an army out of them at the moment. But there are, I will just mention them. So you've got the Inquisition, they have some models out, but there's not really enough to create an army. You have Assassins, which Assassins are like models you would add to an army. To any Imperium army you can add an Assassin or a few Assassins. Also the Sisters of Silence, which are very cool. I'm sort of waiting for some rules. I'm hoping some rules for the Sisters of Silence come out in White Dwarf, because I have got some Sisters of Silence models. And I love the models, in fact, and I really like the lore around them, and I sort of want to play them with the next faction of what I'm going to go into, which is the Adeptus Custodes. Now, I do have Adeptus Custodes myself. I very much like the Adeptus Custodes. They're a very elite army. Now, the three previous armies I've talked about, the Adeptus Sororitas, the Adeptus Mechanicus, and the Astra Militarum, they're all quite heavy on models, so that you're going to have to buy a lot of models probably for each of those armies. I mean, you can do it with ways of building lists without buying so many models, but you're probably going to buy a lot of models for those armies. Which means, obviously, if you're buying a lot of models, they're probably going to be, it's going to cost you more for the army. The good thing about the Adeptus Custodes is each model is worth a lot of points in the game, so you don't need as many to create an army and be able to play that army. So Adeptus Custodes is actually one of the cheapest armies you can play. Basically, they are the Emperor's bodyguards. They're the golden boys. They're in golden armor. They look brilliant. They're sort of your super soldiers, if you like. They've been with the Emperor pretty much since the beginning. They were through the Unification Wars, the Great Crusade. They've been there the whole step of the way, and their main job for the last 10,000 years has been guarding the Emperor's corpse on the Golden Throne. That is pretty much what they've done. Now they are starting to go out into the solar system, into the galaxy, to help the Imperium defend itself against all the different threats. So since Roberta Gilliman has come back, which we will talk about later, they have gone out into the galaxy, and they've been fighting and sort of defending the Imperium. They're very, very cool. They've got a guy called Constantine Valdor, who went missing back just after the Emperor, or just after the Horus Heresy, basically. And no one sort of knows where he's gone, so there's a lot of speculation that he could come back at any time. And they say Constantine Valdor is so tough that he could go toe to toe in a practice cage against a Primarch. So he's obviously a very, very tough guy. They've also got Valoris, which is their named character, and at the moment the head of the Custodian Guard. He's very cool, and you've just got so many. You've got the jet bikes, which are really, really nice. Just the Custodian Guard models themselves are brilliant. So just a really nice looking army. And like I say, relatively cheap to field 2,000 points, because that's sort of 2,750 points is what you're going to be playing most of the time. We'll go into obviously points and list building in another video. But yeah, so it's a sort of a fairly cheap army. So now we have the Imperial Knights. Now the Imperial Knights are big war machines. You should be able to see some behind me. So you have three different classes of knights. You have the Armiger class, the Questoris class, and the Dominus class. So the Dominus class, you have a couple of knights, which is the Castellan and the Valiant. These are like expensive on points. You're talking sort of like probably a quarter of your army. They're very, very powerful though, and they can deal out a lot of damage. Then you have the Questoris Knights, which is sort of the medium range, and then you have the Armiger, which are the smaller range. So they're very, very cool. You just have one human pilot, which pilot each one, and they are from like a noble house, from an ancestral knightly noble house. And yeah, basically they pilot these machines, and they're very, very strong. These are quite often put with Astra Militarum or Imperial Guard, because the two go together very, very well. They complement each other on the battlefield very well. So you probably will see them teamed up together. But yeah, basically, if you like big models that can dish out a lot of damage, then these are probably for you. Again, for 2,000 points, probably not that expensive. Well, I don't know, actually, you're probably looking at about £80 a night, so they're probably quite expensive to field 2,000 points. But yeah, definitely have a look. I'm sure there's cheaper ways, because the Armiger ones are cheaper, so there's cheaper ways to field it, so it probably wouldn't work out being that expensive as an army. So now we're going to go on to talk about the Adeptus Astartes, or otherwise known as the Space Marines. Now, before we go into these, I am going to say there's sort of a caveat before I talk about all of the Adeptus Astartes. So recently, in the last couple of years, Games Workshop brought out what is called Primaris Marines, which are basically an upgrade to the Space Marines. So at the moment, you've got a lot of books out there for the Space Marines, which have the Space Marine rules in, and they also have different rules for the Primaris data sheets. Now, the Primaris Marines, it's the general consensus that the Primaris Marines are going to replace the Space Marines. So if I was you and you're just getting into Warhammer 40k, I wouldn't buy any Space Marines. I would only buy Primaris Marines, because I'm assuming they're replacing the whole of the Space Marine range. And if you look what Games Workshop have done with the points, and they've made it so Space Marines aren't very good and Primaris Marines are better because they're more worth their points. So I wouldn't go out buying loads of Space Marines, is my my piece of advice. So as I talk through these, just remember that, and I'll be telling you sort of about whether they work with Primaris or not particularly. Okay, so we'll start off. We're going to start off with the Death Watch, which has its own codex. Basically, the Death Watch are a mix of all of the other chapters. So you get Death Watch from all the different chapters. So it could be Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Space Wolves, Ultramarines. They all come from different chapters, and then they come in and they fight for the Death Watch. Now these are designed, this whole chapter is designed to fight the Xenos races. So races such as Orcs, Eldar, Necrons, that is what they're primarily designed for. Don't get me wrong, they're really, really good, the Death Watch in this edition. They have a lot of firepower, and you can fight them against anyone, really. But that is what they're designed for. So they have certain stratagems in their codex which are good against the Xenos races. So always remember that, and when you're looking into the lore and stuff. But they're a really, really good army, great fun, and you can sort of mix and match with units. I won't go too much into detail of that, but it's quite cool what you can do with the units and stuff. So yeah, but if you think that's something, they're a bit like if you watch Game of Thrones, you know, the Night's Watch. They're a bit like the Night's Watch, the Death Watch. They're all in black, and they basically have these outposts all over the galaxy, these fortresses, and they are basically keeping a lookout to defend the Imperium, you know, from the Xenos races. So that is the Death Watch. So yeah, have a look into them, see if it's something that tickles your fancy. Next one I'm going to go into is the Grey Knights. Now the Grey Knights are similar to Death Watch in terms of they are specifically designed to kill Chaos instead of Xenos. Okay, so every single Grey Knight is a psyker, and they do extra damage to like demons and things like that with their psychic powers. They're an elite army, so you're not going to get that many models. Again, probably a good option if you don't want to spend too much money, because they're fairly cheap. Now, Grey Knights in this edition aren't fantastic because they're in a bit of a weird place. Because they're using Space Marines, they don't have access to Primaris Marines. So they're in a bit of a weird place at the moment, and I feel like they might be for the rest of 8th edition unless something changes. I'm assuming that GW will come up with something for them in 9th edition, but they're still a good army. You can still play them, just maybe not hyper competitively. But you can definitely still go to your local GW store and you can win games with them, 100%. But yeah, really, really cool. Like, none has ever turned to chaos. A bit like the Adeptus Custodes, none of them have ever turned to chaos. So they're very cool. Loads of psychic ability, loads of shenanigans you can do. Their Codex was brought out early in 8th edition, so there's some things like their stratagems are a bit expensive and things like that, but like I say, definitely still usable in your local GW store or your local gaming store, and you could definitely win games with them. Okay, so the next one we're going to go on to is the Blood Angels. Okay, so the Blood Angels have their own codex, so they are they have a lot of their own sort of unique units, if you like. They have like Librarian Dreadnoughts and Sanguinary Guard, so they're very, very cool. Their Primarch was Sanguinius, and basically a little bit of lore on Sanguinius is he fought Horus before the Emperor. Horus killed him, but he did manage to chink the armor, which was what allowed the Emperor to then kill Horus. So he's a bit of a martyr or a saint, you know. He's sort of like the angel, and yeah, the Blood Angels are very, very good. They're a very good close assault army, so if you like getting stuck in there, battering people with thunder hammers, then the Blood Angels are probably for you. Okay, now we're going to move on to the Dark Angels. So the Dark Angels are shrouded in mystery and secrecy as a chapter. So their Primarch is Lionel Johnson. He had a should we say rivalry with the Space Wolves Primarch Lyman Russ. So there's a bit of like a sort of banter between the two chapters. And there's also actually in-game rules. I think if you play Space Wolves against Dark Angels, there's a stratagem you can play or a rule you can do, which is quite cool. But the Dark Angels are quite good shooting Space Marine army. They have some good rules. They have some cool specific units, sort of such as the Raven Wing and the Terminators as well. So there's some really, really nice flavour to the Dark Angels, but look into them, look at their lore, have a look into Lionel Johnson, see if that's something that you like. So these are all obviously the Adeptus Astartes, they're all Space Marine super soldiers. Dark Angels actually work very well with Primaris, so have a look into that, have a look into the rules and see if that's something that you would you'd want to collect. So next on, we're going to move on to the Space Wolves. Now the Space Wolves Primarch, as I mentioned earlier, is Lyman Russ. The Space Wolves come from a planet called Fenris, which is a very cold planet. They're sort of, if you like, modelled on Vikings, and they have wolves that go into battle. Some of them ride wolves. They also have something called the Curse of the Wolfen, which and they have models called Wolfen. So yeah, and they're very much, again, similar to Blood Angels, a very close combat army, which with the Blood Angels and the Space Wolves at the moment, they don't lend themselves very well to Primaris. I'm not sure if GW are going to address that, maybe change some rules, because basically like the Space Wolves close combat unit has specific rules, but only as Space Marines. You can't have Primaris and have them specific rules. So it's quite hard to then integrate Primaris into Space Wolves, because they're not really doing what Space Wolves do. They just might as well be normal Marines, if you like. So yeah, but they've got really, really great flavour. They're very cool. Like if you're into that sort of whole Viking thing, beards, you know, sort of Mohican ponytails and all that sort of thing. They don't really, Space Wolves don't really like wearing their helmets. It's all about the beards and faces out and stuff like that. So yeah, but they're very, very cool. Again, they've got brilliant characters. Their characters are very, very good. Unfortunately, like I say, Space Wolves and Blood Angels probably are suffering a little bit because of the fact that the Primaris don't integrate as well with their codex. So next we're going to move on to the Space Marine Codex as a whole. So there's a Space Marine Codex with, I'm only going to go through the main chapters. There are successor chapters, hundreds of successor chapters. There are a couple that I think are going to have rules now. So Crimson Fists have rules in the White Dwarf, and I think Blood Ravens are getting rules in the next White Dwarf. I'm not going to go into them. I'm just going to talk about the main chapters. So this is the founding chapters. So I'm going to start off with the Salamanders. Salamanders are very cool. Their Primarch is a Vulcan, who is a perpetual, so which means he cannot be killed. He'll just keep coming back and keep coming back. They love their flamers, do the Salamanders. Yeah, and they're just, again, they have their own specific rules, as do all of the chapters have their own specific rules. And the Salamanders are just a good solid choice, so have a look into them, have a read of some of like the heresy books with them in, and see if that's something that you'd like to play. So next up, chapter we're going to talk about is the Raven Guard. Okay, Raven Guard are like a stealthy chapter. Their Primarch is Corvus Corax. I forgot to say earlier, Lionel Johnson is in a sleep, so there is a good chance he's going to return. I'm not sure when, but he probably will return. The same as Lehman Russ for the Space Wolves, and also the same with Vulcan for the Salamanders. So if you were going to collect one of those armies, there's a good chance at some point in the next few years that Primarch will return and you'll be able to add him to your army, which is pretty cool. So with Corvus Corax, exactly the same thing. He's missing at the moment, but he could return at any point, and you can add him to your Raven Guard army. Raven Guard are pretty cool. They're like -1 to hit outside 12 inches, which is a very, very good chapter trait. Yeah, they just have some cool lore if you have a look into them. It's all about stealth, they're sort of hiding in the shadows and that sort of thing, but they're a very nice Space Marine chapter. So again, same for all of the Space Marine chapters. Have a look, have a read into the lore, see which one grabs you, and collect that one. Or have a look at Chaos and Xenos if none of them grab your attention. So next up is White Scars, which is actually a chapter that I am going to collect. I'm just waiting for some Primaris bikes to come out, because I don't want to buy the old bikes, because like I said to you earlier, the Space Marine range seems to be getting replaced by the Primaris range, so I'm waiting for that. So the White Scars they're based on like the Mongols. So their Primarch is called Jagatai Khan, a bit like Genghis Khan. And they're very much hit and run tactics, so hence the bikes. A lot of them are played on bikes and that sort of thing. So I'm really looking forward to doing that army. I'm actually hoping to do it as a successor chapter of the White Scars, and they'll actually be in black and yellow, so our channel colours. And they are going to, because the Destroyers, which are a successor chapter, are called, which are called the Destroyers, they are black and yellow. So I thought, well, that fits perfectly. So that's probably what I'll do. But yeah, Jagatai Khan again could return at any time. So it's pretty cool. You can add him to your army when he does return. The Imperial Fists is actually a YouTuber called Chapter Master Varak. If you're watching this, you probably know who Chapter Master Varak is. He's a very cool guy, and he loves his Imperial Fists. It's like, and he loves Rogel Dawn, which is their Primarch. So if you want to learn about the Imperial Fists, head over to Chapter Master Varak's channel, and he will tell you all about them all day. Really, really good guy, and he gives you a lot of up-to-date news and information on the hobby, so you should go and subscribe to him. So yeah, Imperial Fists are sort of like your run-of-the-mill Space Marines. They're very cool. They're good at defensive. So basically, Rogel Dawn and the Imperial Fists in the Horus Heresy, they were charged with the defense of Terra. Pretty important job, and old Rogel Dawn is very good at this. Rogel Dawn is actually missing at the moment. They only had a hand. They found a hand of his, so he was presumed dead, but I think with the way people are talking, he's probably just missing, and I think he will return. So then we move on to the Iron Hands. The Iron Hands Primarch is called Ferrus Manus. Ferrus Manus is actually one of the Primarchs. There's two Loyalist Primarchs which are dead, which obviously one is Sanguinius, the other one is Ferrus Manus. Ferrus Manus actually got his head chopped off, I believe, by Fulgrim, the Primarch, the traitor Primarch from the Emperor's Children. So the Iron Hands are very, very cool. I actually think there's a new model coming out for the Iron Hands very, very soon. Might even be a named character. Maybe. I can't remember. But yeah, again, Space Marines, they've got their own trait. I think the Iron Hands trait is a 6-up feel no pain, so it's quite good. But yeah, again, they're cool. They've got their own little flavour. Again, read into them, have a look into them. Read their lore and see if it's something that interests you. Obviously, I'll try and get some pictures up and you can see what they look like, and see if you think that's something that you would like to paint. So next up is the Ultramarines. Now the Ultramarines are said to be the poster boys of Warhammer 40k. So these are the good guys, you know, and as such, Rabute Gilliman, who is their Primarch, has returned. He's the first Primarch to return in Warhammer 40k. He was brought back to life by Inyad, I think, is the Inari character, and he's brought Gilliman back to life to help the Imperium. So take a read into those books and have a look into that lore to see why. But yes, Rabute Gilliman, he is the first Primarch. He's very, very good on the tabletop. You can play him pretty much with any Imperium army. But yeah, he is an Ultramarine. He's the head of the Ultramarines. The Ultramarines are, again, very good. They can fall out of combat and shoot, which is a very good thing to have in this edition. And yeah, again, they're Space Marines. They've got some great lore. Go and have a read, have a look, see if Rabute Gilliman tickles your fancy. Obviously, if you want to play Primarchs, this would probably be the chapter to have, because he's the only one that's, or the only Loyalist one, that has returned so far. So you might be waiting a long time depending on what chapter you choose. So this pretty much rounds up the Imperium armies. I hope that I've given you a little flavour on each one. Obviously I haven't delved too deep because we could be here for hours and hours. But I hope I've given you a little flavour. Maybe one of them you thought, oh, actually quite like the sound of that. You can go and do some more reading, research, look at the models, see how much it's going to cost for you. See if there's something that you feel like you want to paint, or you want to come up with your... And remember, any of this, you can read into the lore, you can make your own chapter up. You can use Space Marines, paint in whatever colour you want. Just use whichever rules you want. So you don't have to choose a certain one, play their rules, do this, that. You can choose your own successor chapter. You can make up a successor chapter. You can paint them whatever colour you want, and you can use whatever rules you want. It's entirely up to you. But I hope this has been, I've helped you. Please like and subscribe. I will do another 2 videos on this exact subject, which will be for the Chaos armies and the Xenos armies. I think the Imperium probably have the most armies, so the next 2 videos could well be shorter. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. Please like and subscribe, and we'll be bringing more content to you soon. Thanks, bye.